Welcome to the chapter podcasts for the Springer Handbook of Using Virtual Exchange Across Disciplines, Building Global Citizens from Home. This exciting chapter is entitled Virtual Exchange as Disciplinary Praxis, Enhancing ESP and Intercultural Communication through Collaborative Scenario-Based Learning in Tourism and Hospitality. And we have the authors with us today to talk about their VE partnership in depth. Marina Falaska and Urania Katsara will be answering two big questions during the next half hour or so. One, based on the chapter, what impact did VE have on the subject matter of your course? Two, what would have been missed in teaching about your discipline if VE were not included? I invite the authors to introduce yourselves, giving your affiliations, research and teaching interests, and perhaps something on how you met and came together to do this project.
Thank you. Thank you, Pat, for having us. We're honored to be featured in this podcast. Thank you also for selecting our chapter as one of the open access chapters in the book. I'm Professor Marina Falasca from Buenos Aires, Argentina. I teach higher education didactics with a focus on English for specific purposes at Lenguas Vivas Teacher Training College and also Universidad Tecnológica Nacional. My research focuses on virtual exchange, ESP, teacher education, and educational technology with a particular emphasis on sustainability and artificial intelligence. I've been an active virtual exchange practitioner for many years now, and I've also developed many trainings for faculty. However, this type of practice is not very common at the university level in Argentina, especially in public universities or teacher training institutions. So I wanted to give my own pre-service ESP teachers at Lenguas Vivas the chance to experience virtual exchange firsthand as part of the professional preparation that they undergo. And that's how I got to think about Rania, who was an ideal partner for this initiative because she teaches English for intercultural communication in the tourism and hospitality department. Rania, would you like to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Okay. Thank you very much, Patricia and Marina. Thank you for inviting us to take part in this podcast. It's a pleasure to have the opportunity to discuss our work and the collaboration behind the chapter. My name is Vanya Gacha. I'm currently a senior teaching fellow in English for specific and academic purposes at the University of Patras in Greece, where I teach a variety of courses related to ESP and intercultural communication. My research focuses on intercultural communication to prepare students to engage effectively in diverse global and professional contexts. At the time of the project, however, I was teaching at the University of Piraeus in the Department of Tourist Studies, where I taught English for intercultural communication. I met Marina through Star Scholars Network, as both with also serve as Star Scholars Country Director for our countries. Marina's work focuses on higher education didactics with a focus on English for specific purposes. So our collaboration emerged quite naturally from these shared interests, because my focus is on English intercultural communication, tourism, hospitality, and Marina works with pre-service CSP teachers who are learning to design courses and materials. This partnership offered a mutual beneficial opportunity for both groups. So the idea of bringing these students together and pre-service teachers from Argentina together allowed us to create a learning environment where students can engage with authentic intercultural scenarios, reflecting on how communication and cultural expectations shape professional interactions. Thank you again, Patricia and Marina, for your thoughts.
As section editor for World Languages and Applied Humanities, I serve as moderator for this podcast. An expert in business French and language for special purposes, I am Patricia Cummins, a professor of French and intercultural communication at Virginia Commonwealth University in Richmond, Virginia. In addition to publishing 6 books and over 60 articles, I have hosted grant-funded American language and civilization workshops for international teachers and learners of English. And that's one of the reasons I found this chapter to be particularly exciting. I come back again to the questions on VE impact on disciplinary learning and what would be missed without VE. Who would like to comment first?
I can go first. For my future teachers at Linguas Vivas, the virtual exchange functioned as a kind of practicum 2.0. It provided a learning experience that extended beyond the boundaries of traditional teacher training by situating pedagogical practice within an authentic international context. Through this experience, I think my trainees came to understand that English for specific purposes involves a lot more than just teaching specialized vocabulary or technical terminology. I think they realize that teaching ESP requires the design of pedagogical tasks that prompt learners to use language as a tool for professional and interpersonal action, expressing empathy, negotiating meaning, and also resolving realistic intercultural misunderstandings. Among so many other valuable things, I think my pre service teachers also learned how to create meaningful, real life inspired scenarios that foster authentic communication and purposeful interaction. And I have to thank Rania for this because she shared a wonderful framework that she put together, which enables learners to engage with language as a medium for collaboration and problem solving. So, using this framework as a starting point, my trainees designed their own critical incidents. And I think the experience transformed their understanding of their own roles as future teachers in an interconnected world. Because, in a virtual exchange environment, teachers are not simply instructors who transmit knowledge, they must also function as intercultural mediators, learning designers, and technological facilitators. And these roles require the ability to manage cross cultural communication, guide students through collaborative digital environments, and also support learners as they navigate unfamiliar perspectives and communicative norms. Most importantly, I think pre service teachers also developed a much more realistic approach to assessment and feedback rather than focusing narrowly on linguistic accuracy or grammatical correctness as they often do. They learned to provide feedback that was interculturally appropriate and also communicatively oriented. For example, they focused on such things as empathy, communicative effectiveness, and all of these are qualities that are very important in professional and intercultural interactions where mutual understanding is more important than perfect grammar. Without this exchange, I think teacher preparation would likely have remained very decontextualized. Pre service teachers would have missed critical dimensions of the teaching experience that cannot easily be simulated in traditional course book. For example, it's difficult to teach trainees what it feels like when a partner fails to respond to a message, when communication breaks down because of cultural assumptions, or when a collaborative project stalls because of misunderstandings between international peers. As we all know, these situations require emotional intelligence, patience, and also intercultural awareness. And these are skills that are fundamental for navigating the complexities of global learning environments these days. And another important lesson was learning to let go of control in the learning process. Many of my trainees initially assumed that effective teaching requires close management of every single step of a given task or project. However, participating in this virtual exchange allowed them to witness transformative moments when learners assumed full ownership of their work. For instance, when students worked together to manage a simulated crisis scenario in English, the pre service teachers saw how engaged the learners became when they were given real responsibility and autonomy. And I think that experiencing this dynamic firsthand helped them recognize that genuine learner autonomy is not only possible, but also deeply empowering. Ultimately, the virtual exchange became a powerful lesson in pedagogical flexibility. It showed future teachers that English is not just a subject to teach, but also a tool that people use to work together, build relationships, and share ideas across cultures. Through this experience, pre service teachers gain a much deeper understanding of how language education can prepare students to participate in a connected global world. And I think it also highlighted how English functions as a flexible lingua franca among speakers with diverse linguistic and cultural backgrounds.
Rania,
Okay.
did you have
Okay.
an added comment?
Okay. Thank you very much, Marino, for your very informative and very interesting discussion of your points of view. And from my point of view, for the Greek students from the University of PS, the virtual exchange significantly deepened the engagement with the subject matter by transforming intercultural communication from a theoretical topic into an applied professional practice. Through the analysis of Jewish-related critical incidents designed by prestigious students applied frameworks such as the three P's of culture and the bonus 16 hats to interpret intercultural understandings, evaluate possible responses, and propose culturally sensitive solutions. This process required them to move beyond memorizing concepts and instead use them as analytical tools to examine real situations that mirror those encountered in tourist and hospitality workplaces. The asynchronous exchange and feedback process also required students to articulate and justify their interpretations in English, strengthening the disciplinary language and professional communication skills. By engaging with peers from a different cultural and educational background, students developed greater awareness of how cultural perspectives shape expectations in service encounters, communication styles, and professional behavior. The exchange, therefore, helped them practice the kind of intercultural mediation and problem solving that professionals in international tourism environments regularly face. Without this prevention exchange program, most of this learning would likely have remained at a purely theoretical level. The Greek students would have missed the opportunity to engage with the interpersonal realities of the modern tourist workplaces, where communication styles vary, culture norms differ, and professional expectations are shaped by diverse traditions and perspectives. In a traditional classroom, discussions of Jews sometimes rely on simplified generalizations, such as referring broadly to the American Jews or the Latin American horse. The virtual exchange challenged these assumptions by exposing students to real individuals with distinct viewpoints and interpretations, encouraging them to move beyond stereotypes and approach intercultural interaction with greater awareness, nuance, and cultural humility. Moreover, without this virtual exchange program, the first time these students might encounter a complex intercultural professional challenge could be during their first job in the tourism industry. This exchange instead functioned as a safe learning environment, almost like a lab for intercultural communication, where students could experiment with interpretations, test solutions, make mistakes, and refine the responses through feedback and reflection. This process allowed them to develop confidence and adaptive communication strategies without any professional consequences that may accompany real workplace misunderstandings. So, in this way, the virtual exchange program not only enriched this disciplinary learning, but also provided early preparation for the complex intercultural interactions that characterize contemporary tourism and hospitality professions.
This is all delightful. I really enjoyed listening to it. As we conclude our podcast, I want to provide you just one final opportunity to add to your existing comments.
Sure. I think the most important takeaway is that virtual exchange works best when it's integrated into the discipline itself. It's not just about teaching and learning English for tourism. In our chapter, we challenge the idea of virtual exchange as an optional or extra activity. As you know, virtual exchange is often treated as an extracurricular activity, something nice to have, but not really essential. And what we argue instead is that virtual exchange should be seen as a core pedagogical approach, especially in fields where global and intercultural competence are key, like tourism and hospitality management. Also, by framing virtual exchange as disciplinary practice, I think we were able to show how international collaboration can be directly connected to specific learning outcomes. In our case, English for specific purposes, tourism and hospitality management. For example, the real world dilemmas and critical incidents designed by my trainees for the Greek students to work on push them to move beyond stereotypes and use English as a real tool for problem solving. So I think that by the end of the experience, we saw a clear shift in their thinking from simply asking, how do we keep the tourists happy, to demonstrating real professional empathy and cultural humility.
Thank you, Marina. It was actually, I couldn't agree more with Marina. From my perspective, the value of this virtual exchange comes when it is embedded directly into the learning process and connected to disciplinary praxis, rather than treated as an optional add-on. In our project, students weren't just completing a separate activity. They were using this virtual exchange to engage in the core practices of their discipline, developing the skills, reasoning, and professional judgment that are central to intercultural communication choice. So, by framing this exchange as disciplinary praxis, the virtual exchange became an essential part of their training for real world professional challenges. So I couldn't agree more that disciplinary praxis is really very, very important when we're dealing with ESP in the virtual exchange context.
Exactly. Yeah, I think we wanted to demonstrate how scenario based learning can simulate the high stakes and predictable nature of the tourism industry, allowing the Greek students to practice both English for specific purposes and intercultural mediation in a professional yet, safe to fail environment. And we also wanted the pre-service teachers to have the opportunity to design fully authentic materials based on realistic critical incidents, and also to practice offering interculturally appropriate feedback to the students in Greece. This worked wonderfully well. I think the exchange supported learning on both sides, professional communication and intercultural competence for the tourism students, and pedagogical design and reflective teaching practice for the pre-service teachers.
I think your point, Marina, in this safe environment is really very important. It's good to find a way to create a learning safe environment for all learners and teachers involved in this, because the safe environment actually creates the framework for a successful outcome.
Once again, I would like to underscore the importance of this chapter for those engaged in teacher education or in tourism education anywhere in the world. Quoting from your last paragraph, by integrating disciplinary content with sustained intercultural engagement, COIL VE supported the development of reflective, globally oriented English teachers, particularly in contexts where opportunities for physical mobility remain limited for the majority of undergraduate students. These findings reinforce the relevance of curriculum-embedded COIL VE as a meaningful pathway for advancing equitable and responsible internationalization in English teacher education. Thank you again for your contributions to this volume and to the disciplines of tourism and English for specific purposes.
Thank you, Pat. Thank you, Rania.
Thank you. Thank you very much.